My name's Ethan Braid. Today we're going to talk about trust funding and how to tell right away if your trust is actually funded. I've been in the wealth management industry for over 25 years, and throughout my career, I have seen hundreds of estate plans. One thing that has become very apparent to me is that there are a lot of people who think that their trust is funded, but in reality, it isn't, and they don't know it. Let me tell you a story to prove the point. About 15 years ago, I was meeting with a gentleman in his mid-50s who had a family to discuss his retirement plan and his estate plan. This individual was the CEO of a major institution and also an orthopedic surgeon. Very smart guy, very ambitious. So in the course of the meeting, I'm looking at his brokerage statements, I've reviewed his trust, I'm looking at his documents, I've looked at the home ownership per the county's website to see how it's titled. And I point out to the doctor, I say, "Doctor, in looking at your assets and reviewing your trust, I can see that your trust has not been funded." And his response to me was, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. My attorney took care of that." And I said, "No, really, doctor. Your assets are not in the trust." And again, he blew me off and he said, "Oh, I got the best lawyer in town. He took care of that." Unfortunately, this story is all too common, and it's happened to me dozens of times in my career where I meet with a wealthy family and then I point out to them that, hey, you've got great trust documents and you have an estate plan, but your assets are not actually in the trust and they will go through probate. So we need to fund the trust. And there's usually disbelief. People don't believe me. They think that the attorney took care of it when in fact their trust is not funded. So this video is for all of you who are watching who have an estate plan or are going to get an estate plan, but you're uncertain about trust funding. You're going to want to pay attention. I'm going to show you how you can very quickly determine, for brokerage assets in particular, if your trust has actually been funded. To determine if your trust has actually been funded, all you need to do is take a look at the address portion of your brokerage statement. Okay, I'm talking Fidelity, Schwab, Vanguard, etc. If your trust has been properly funded, then the address will say your name and then trustee, and then it's going to talk probably about your living trust, and then this DTD, that stands for dated date, the date of creation of your trust, and then of course your address. This is what it looks like right here when your trust has been properly funded. If your brokerage statement just has your name and your address and doesn't say anything about trustee or TTEE standing for trustee or the living trust name, date, etc., then your trust is not funded. The account is still just in your name and you will go through probate unless you change that and fund the trust. So there's your litmus test for trust funding. It's really that simple. All you need to do is take a look at your brokerage statement and verify that your trust is listed on the address line. You want to see the name of your trust. You should be referenced as a trustee, and then you'll want to see the date of creation of the trust. If you have those three components, you as a trustee, the name of the trust, and the date of creation on the address line of your brokerage statement, then you can be confident that your trust is funded. But if your brokerage statement merely says your name and your address, then no, your trust is not funded and you have a problem. I've been fascinated with this trust funding issue my entire career, mostly because I've seen it so many times. And I think the reasons for why this problem arises are multiple. I think on one hand, you have people that just get confused. They think that by receiving the trust document and signing all that paperwork, that they're taken care of. And of course, that's just not true. And then I think, unfortunately, there are a small amount of attorneys out there who stand to benefit in a huge way by you not funding your trust. And therefore, they're not going to work too hard to get you to fund the trust, because if you don't fund your trust, when you die, your assets will go through probate. And that is when the lawyer is going to make a lot more money. They'll make way more money probating your estate, maybe over $100,000, than they will drafting your trust. So good lawyers that do good estate planning work put themselves out of business when it comes to the long term, because there's no administrative work for them when you die. If your assets are properly funded, then your beneficiaries will be able to handle the majority of your estate without the use of a lawyer. And so that's something else to think about, And then maybe the third reason is that people don't want to pay a lawyer for administrative work, and so while they're alive, and so trust funding is mostly administrative work. And I think that's probably the other reason why trusts don't get funded. Look, good lawyers, really good estate lawyers, they follow through when they do an estate plan, and they make sure that your trusts are funded and your assets are put in the trust. If you're unsure about which of your assets are in your trust versus not in your trust, what I recommend is that you make a list of all of your assets. Excel is a great tool for that. Write down who the custodian is, what's the ownership structure of the assets, who owns it. This is my example, family Bob and Sue. And then what action steps need to be taken to get those assets into the trust or update your beneficiaries. If you design just a little simple planner like we're looking at here and then follow through, you can start checking off all your assets and have great confidence that all of your assets that should be in the trust are in the trust and that your estate plan is bulletproof. Since most trust funding work is just administrative, you can save yourself a lot of money by preparing a planner like I just showed you and doing it yourself. You don't need to hire your lawyer to do administrative work. Some of the trust funding work you will need help with, things like limited partnerships and LLCs. But most trust funding is just administrative. You can save yourself a lot of money by doing it yourself. Ultimately, if your trusts are not properly funded, then upon the death of the second spouse, your assets are going to go through probate. And this will be very expensive for your beneficiaries. There will be significant legal costs associated with that. And look, any lawyer who tells you, trust funding isn't a big deal, probate's not that complicated anymore, run away. Because what happens is that when you're dead, then your beneficiaries are going to get the lawyer's business card. They're going to go to the attorney and say, gosh, you helped mom and dad. It's emotional, right? They're grieving. They're not thinking. And the lawyer is going to make a ton of money. That's how it works. They make way more money probating an estate than they do drafting a trust document. I hope this video was helpful. I hope this video gets you thinking about your estate documents and overall improve your family's financial plan.